Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the May 16th edition of Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and above all accountable to you, the show that seeks to remind you of a simple truth every week. That truth being that when your government spends money, it is spending your money. Government has no money of its own. It spends your money. That gives you a very special role in the governance of our town. You get to determine how much money your government will spend, and you get to determine what they will spend it on. We're going to do a different format for this evening's show. With me here this evening is John Gorga, longtime resident of Winsted, longtime participant in and observer in our government. And we will be talking about the burning issue of the hour this evening, the budget. Part and parcel of the budget will be the revaluation that will be taking place during the course of this summer. We can't really understand the budget in a vacuum without thinking about the valuation. We can't really think about the valuation without thinking about budget issues too. As a quick reminder, the views that I express on this show this evening are those of myself. They do not reflect those of the Winchester Board of Education, nor of the Gilbert School Corp on which I sit. With that, John, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I thought what we would do today is I had quite a bit of feedback from the 5-minute speech I gave at the town meeting. People want to understand it, want to understand the philosophy, and I thought we'd go through that, and if there are more questions, we'll attempt to solve them in another half hour or another hour in another day and time.
Good.
But to start with, the process that we went through was fairly straightforward. We went down to the assessor's office. We looked at property transactions for the last 6 months. The date that I did that was 3/2/2012. I took the property transactions for what I call my parcel of my section of town, which is roughly Horn Avenue over to North Main Street, down to maybe Perkins Gay Street area, over to a little bit of Hinsdale, and down Wheeler Street. So that gives you a good representation. And in there were 29, 30 sales. What we did, there weren't that many sales, maybe 20 or so sales. I have a few blanks here. I try to keep it in the same format, and I go street by street. But what we did is we totaled all the sales, and all the sales represented $1,475,800 worth of revenue. The assessed value of those properties were $2,527,000. And we took the percentage of the discount, and the discount was a 42% discount off of the 2007 appraisal values. We went through the same process for the lake, the sales from 7/26/2011 to 3/2/12, and we had 18 sales at the lake. The sales revenues were $5,623,098. The appraised value was $6,011,683. When you net it out, it was a 6% discount. So the lake is selling pretty much at 2007 appraised values. We then looked at the transactions in Winchester. There were 11 total transactions in the same time period. $2,108,400 of revenue against an appraised value of $2,788,540, 24% discount. So then we took that data, and once again it's averaging over all the sales. I've done this since 2007, and it has always stepped down. In the Winsted area, it stepped down from 18 to 24 to 36 down to now it's, what did they say, 42%. And we applied that against the grand list. And we're taking the grand list, 1 mil equals 800,000. It's probably a little bit more, probably 860,000, but this is close enough for the work we're doing. We said the current grand list is 800,000, 16% or 128 million represents autos and personal property. 28% or 224 million represents the lake. 16% or 128 million represents Winchester, and 40% or 320 million represents Winsted, for a total of 100%, $800 million total grand list as it currently sits. We then plugged in the numbers, the discount numbers. The personal property and auto is valued at market value every year. They go through that exercise with the state for autos and the personal property for machinery, etc. We left that at 1. So we said the 128 million is going to be 128 million in the new grand list. The lake is down 6%, so we took 0.94 and multiplied it by 224, and we got a lake valuation of $221 million. Winchester is down 24%, so we took 0.76 times 128 million, we got 97 million. And we took Winsted down 42%, so we took 0.58 times 320 million, and we got 186 million. So the new grand list is going to be roughly $632 million.
So just to stop you there, there's a lot of numbers that we're throwing out at you here this evening, but the bottom line is really quite simple. The overall grand list is shrinking. That is being driven by a dramatic fall off in the values of our downtown housing stock and our downtown commercial stock. Around Highland Lake, values are somewhat stable, and in Winchester they are somewhat stable also. What that translates into, though, is the overall pie is getting smaller, and the share of the pie, which we'll come on to talk about, that the Lake and Winchester represent, is changing quite dramatically versus the share of the pie that the downtown area represents.
Exactly. So what we did now is we looked at the pie. The pie is now $632 million, but it's divided differently. Okay, and to generate the same amount of taxes with the new grand list of $632 million, the mill rate has to increase by 26.58%. So if you take 800 million divided by 632 million, 1 mill on the old grand list will have to be replaced by 1.2658 mills for the new grand list of $632 million.
And again, to stop you, again, just so we all are very clear here, because the grand list is going down, if you are fortunate enough to have a home that is worth the same today as it was 5 years ago, if the budget stays flat, you will see your taxes go up.
By 26%.
This is a key point, ladies and gentlemen. It relates not just to this year. In fact, it won't relate to this year at all. It'll kick in next year. But this is how we need to put budgets into context. If your home has simply kept its value, and if the budget stays flat, you will see a 26% increase in your taxes.
Okay.
And that's a big number.
And that's a big number. And it changes over the 4 areas that we looked at. Okay. Autos and personal property now make up a bigger percentage of the budget. Okay, it's 128 over 632, or 20.25% of the budget. The lake now represents a bigger percentage of the grand list. It's 221 over 632, or 34.96%. Winchester is about the same. We had it at 16% before. Now it's at 15.34%. The big one is Winsted. Winsted was at 40. Now it's at 29.43. So when you plug all these numbers in and you do the calculation, the people at the lake that are seeing the stable prices are going to see, on average, a tax increase of 46.48%, because they are being held accountable for a bigger portion of the revenue generation. The personal property and autos are going to pick up an even bigger portion. You're going to see a 47.56% increase in your autos and personal property. In the personal property, this is what your manufacturers are seeing. This is not acceptable if you want to keep jobs in Winsted. You just can't do it. Winchester taxes are going to go up on average by 22.28%. And the Winsted taxes are going to go down by approximately 10%. The thing here, though, is the property values have declined so much in Winsted 42%, but you're only seeing a 10% drop in taxes, that you're now in that area where people walk away because the percentage of tax on the appraised value of the property far and away exceeds 1.25%.
And the important thing to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is none of these numbers relate to the budget that we are going to be voting on in 3 weeks' time. This is all relates to a notional flat budget. Taxes raised for the town stay the same. Tax bills for individuals go up dramatically in the order of 40% if you are fortunate enough to live by the lake. This is just math, ladies and gentlemen. This is not politics. This is not policy. This is just the way the math works. And neither you nor we can change the rules of the basic math. What we can do is to change the numbers that we apply to the rules too. And that's where the budget comes in. That's when, as we think about flat budgets, up budgets, down budgets, we have to think about them in the context of this math. A math which says a flat budget with a reval increases property taxes at the lake by upwards of 40%. That's a very sobering number. How do you get people to pay taxes up 20, 30, 40, 50% in individual instances for services which are fundamentally the same? Why is someone going to make that decision? Why is someone going to move to a town where they're looking at those sorts of increases? Why is someone going to work to maintain a business, much less bring a business to a town where you're seeing these sorts of increases just to keep things the same? Not to invest another dime in the town, just to keep things the same. This gets to a very long-term question, which we're not really going to address tonight, but long-term, rehabilitating our downtown has to be the number one challenge for Winsted. Because otherwise this is going to happen each and every reval, each and every time a house changes hands, each and every time significant work is done on a home. We're going to see more and more of the tax burden shifting away from downtown and into the outlying areas, and that's going to kill our town. That is simply not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And the thing of the budget, and this is not a flat budget we're looking at,
Right.
Okay, is that we don't want to change. We don't want to get more efficient. We want to keep everything the same. Back in, I don't know, I have this charter here. Back in 2010, we voted 2,245 yes, 772 no, to amend Section 902 to allow the duties of the finance director to include the financial affairs of the Board of Education. This stuff is back office stuff. This stuff is, both parties have to come to some type of an agreement. It has to be one. It can't be multiple pieces of software, multiple computers, multiple this, multiple that. You're pulling dollars away from the town. You're pulling dollars away from the kids. It has to be one. And that's just one instance. But what is happening is, in the private sector, those that still exist in Winsted are economizing. And you're seeing it with the savings bank. I mean, it's cut half of its branch offices. It put the other building up for sale. That is what has to happen if you're in the private sector and you want to stay alive. And you're going to have to start doing that in the government sector now too.
I mean, let's think about what the budget actually is. The budget that we have in front of us is a increase in taxes of almost 10% for very little. Now, I personally adhere to the principle that says if your tax base is flat, then your taxes should be flat. You cannot, on a sustainable basis, ask the same taxpayers to pay ever more for the same service. Now, we know, as we sit around a kitchen table, we kind of know how this works. If the electricity bill is going up and your wages are flat, you have a choice. You either cut your cable package from 100 channels to 50 channels to free up some money, or you don't go out to eat so often. You have to cut something to make up the extra money required for the electricity bill. You have to make choices. If the tax base is going down, and the analysis that John has just walked you through shows a decline of almost 20% overall in the tax base, it is unrealistic to suppose that we can increase our total spending. It's perhaps unrealistic to believe that long term we can even keep our total spending flat. If our tax base is going down, we have to adjust our spending to accommodate that.
And you have to do it quickly because the spiral is very deadly and very quick. You will see people unload and walk away, and with this shift, much like the shift in taxes on a state level where very few people pay the bulk of the income tax, very few people out of Fairfield County pay the bulk of the income tax that is generated by the state of Connecticut. What you're going to see going forward is very few people are going to be paying the property tax in Winsted going forward, and those people who, and most of the ones that I know up the lake, are either holding the properties in trust or they have no kids or both, and they're going to be called upon to provide a larger and larger portion of a budget that they don't get anything from. And they're paying extraordinary amounts now, and going forward, you're looking at 50% increases.
So the choices that face us, I think, as a community are very simple. How do we invest to increase the tax base? Where can we cut to reduce the cost of our current services? Where can we achieve efficiencies to maintain current services with fewer dollars? I mean, I think, again, all of us, if we boil it down to those three questions, sort of know what the answers are. There are many places in our town government and in our school government where we spend inefficiently. We can list them. We have multiple school systems. We have multiple finance staffs. We have multiple janitorial and custodial staffs. We have multiple back office functions of one sort or another. In this day and age, that's too expensive. We provide health benefits at extraordinary cost. In these days, that's too expensive. We're providing a classic example. A classic town hall employment contract provides an employee a paid day off for his birthday, his or her birthday.
And you know, people better look at this very seriously because the tax base is collapsing, and it will accelerate. And come October 1st, when you switch onto the new system or onto the new grand list, it is going to raise havoc with everything that anybody is trying to do. It is, you know, anything on wheels that will see a 47% increase. Any truck, you know, any commercial truck is going to roll out of town. It's that simple. There's no way that somebody that's paying the price of diesel with all the increase in fuel and then is looking at a 47% increase in automobile or car or truck tax can stay in business. You just can't pass that magnitude of an increase along to your businesses or to your customers and try to stay in business. So we need to identify the efficiencies, the areas that we can provide the same service at lower dollars, and that is one of consolidation, that is one of rationalization. We need to find the areas where we can simply cut, and that's probably regrettably people and portions of the compensation packages of those people. And then we need to find areas where investment can take place and can be productive. We need, rather than deciding to spend money, not to invest, but simply to spend 10% more, we need to focus on areas where we can invest a portion of that money. If we were to offer our businesses in town the option of a discount for paying all of their taxes up front on the first day of the year, that would help the businesses, that would help the cash flow of the town. If we were to offer tax incentives for some of our multifamily homes to be reconverted into single-family owner-occupied homes, that would increase the value of individual homes, that would reduce the slide in the downtown property markets generally, that would help the economy of our town. These are things that we need to be thinking about, ladies and gentlemen. Not just how do we spend less, but how do we invest more. We cannot spend less our way out of this problem. Sooner or later, the spiral that John talks about will take us all the way down to zero. We need to actually build as well as cutting, but we need to do so within the context of a flat budget. We cannot simply say to the people, we need 10% more and you have to pay. We live in the United States of America. The government doesn't tell us what we have to pay. We tell government what we want to pay, what we're willing to pay, what we want them to do with the money. And I think the message that I am hearing, the message that I'm taking away from John's analysis, is
And in the context of a rapidly dwindling pie with less money around, we need A, to curtail the spending, and B, to up the investment. Not simply doing things which are pretty for the town, the median, things like that, which look nice but don't actually generate any taxes. We need to start being more business friendly. We need to start really addressing the issues of empty, foreclosed houses in our downtown area. We need to begin to work on ways that actually will reverse the decline in the grand list and will reverse the massive shifts in that grand list.
Yes, the biggest task at hand is how do you save the neighborhoods in the older section of Winsted? I mean, it's not even downtown anymore.
Right.
It is rapidly expanded out into the older neighborhoods, and the older neighborhoods are at risk. You are essentially creating a slum.
I mean, one of the chief problems that our community faces is a lack of housing mobility. People cannot sell their homes in Winsted, and there's little reason for people to want to move to Winsted until we stabilize values, until we make our community actually function as a community rather than simply as somewhere that it might be cheap to live. This is a people issue, but it's also a structural issue. We got to get the taxes onto a more sustainable model.
Right.
And we actually have to start.
And you can see it going forward. I mean, there is a website, Zillow.com. You can go in and look at houses for sale in the old section of Winsted, how many days they've been on the market and the asking price, and then you can go on Vision Appraisal and look at the 2007 appraised value versus what the asking price is, and I did that for maybe a dozen of them, and the asking price is down 40%. So when your asking price is down 40% and you're going to negotiate a sale, you're looking at a 50% discount from the 2007 appraisal.
And this is not just the residential properties that this applies to. This applies to the commercial properties too.
Everything.
I mean, even those commercial properties that are in good shape. The Northwest Community Bank, that is the branch that is closed at the west end of
Yes.
town, that is for sale for a 25% discount to its last appraised value. And that's obviously a building that is in good shape. It's a pretty building. It's a functional building. It doesn't have any of the blight or contamination issues that we think about when we think about our vacant space downtown. But even that is listed. It hasn't sold. No one's putting a bid on it, but it's listed at a 25% discount.
So that is saying there's no demand. Right off the top. I mean, there's no demand when you're listing it for a significant discount and it's been listed for a while and there's no offer.
So I don't want to put words into John's mouth, but when I think about the budget, which is essentially a 10% up budget, at least where taxes are concerned, it seems to me that in the context of where we are right now, in the context of a grand list that is declining, in the context of a grand list which is seeing the tax burden shift dramatically, now is not the time to be asking people for 10% more.
It's not. You're not putting words in my mouth. The problem with the budget is it doesn't solve the problem at hand, and we're going to come back, I believe, in the next half hour and try to address that.
Right.
We tried to lay the groundwork for what the problem is, what you're facing with reval. I think we've done that. We'll come back next time with some suggestions.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. We will be on probably every week between now and the referendum, which will be on Saturday, June the 2nd. The one complaint that I think you've heard me make week in and week out on this show is that one of the key issues facing our community is how to get more of you to vote. If we cannot get the citizens of this town to the budget referendum, to municipal elections, if we cannot get you to care enough to make the time to show up and vote, we cannot fix the problems that we face. It takes you holding your government accountable, actually deciding how much you want your government to spend, actually saying whether the things that they want to spend it on are appropriate in your mind. It takes you to do that to get a government that actually works. We need you to actually show up. When we have views, we're going to tell you how we think about the budget, how we would vote for the budget, or in this case, not for the budget. But ultimately, our job here is to explain the background to you and encourage you to make up your own mind for or against and show up and vote. Because it's only your voting, it is only you taking ownership of the issues that we face here in this community that will lead ultimately to our being able to fix them. So with that, John, thank you for your input and
you.
your analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, good night, and we will see you next week.